I'm Oliver, and I run a cleaning company with my wife, Ruby. This bathhouse is a cherished family business that I inherited from my grandfather. One evening, we had an unexpected and memorable encounter with a young child. It was an early spring night, and there was still a slight chill in the air. The clock had passed 9 o'clock, and Ruby and I were finishing up after our last customer had left. I had assigned Ruby to clean the inside of the bathhouse while I went outside to take care of the entrance. That's when I noticed a small figure near the garbage disposal area, not too far from our shop. As I got closer, illuminated by the streetlight, I saw that the figure was a ragged little girl searching through the garbage. I wondered what she might be looking for, but considering how late it was, I felt it was best to check on her. I called Ruby over and together we approached the girl. Up close, we saw that despite the chilly weather, she was wearing only a thin, long-sleeve shirt and a skirt, with no shoes on her bare feet. Although she was wearing sneakers, they were far too big, and she was walking on the crushed heels. Ruby and I were both taken aback by her appearance. I gently asked, "Miss, what are you doing here at this late hour?" The girl, startled, jumped and turned toward us. Her hair, slightly longer than shoulder length, was frizzy and untidy, with bangs so long that they hid her eyes. She looked at us and softly said, "I'm hungry." Trying to comfort her and not scare her further, I said, "You're hungry? It's very late, but why don't you come to our place? We can call your mom or dad to come and get you. Do you know your home phone number?" The girl shook her head vigorously, clearly frightened. I understood that coming to a stranger's house might be too intimidating for her. "I see," I said. "It's scary to go with someone you don't know. How about we stay here together for a while, and I'll try to call someone from your home for you." At that moment, I realized she might have misunderstood us. We just wanted to help, but her fear was evident. We were strangers to the girl, and it was late at night when we first spoke to her. But then the girl said something that made our hearts sink. "My mom hasn't come back for about 5 days, she told us. I'm waiting for her to return, but I'm so hungry." As soon as I heard those words, I felt a deep concern that this might be a case of neglect or abuse. I thought it might be best to call the police to ensure her safety. "Can you wait a little while I call the police?" I asked. But the girl's face turned wary as soon as I mentioned the police. "No, Mom said the police are bad." "I don't like the police," she said, clearly frightened. Her fear made me worry that she might run away if we called the authorities. Just then, a loud gurgling noise came from her stomach, emphasizing her hunger. "In the midst of this," Ruby asked gently, "how long has it been since you've eaten?" "Are you very hungry?" the girl replied. "I haven't eaten anything since this morning." Her words left both Ruby and me at a loss. A child who had not eaten all day, rummaging through the trash at night while dressed in thin clothes, could such a heartbreaking situation be real? Ruby then surprised me with her next words. "Would you like to come to our home?" I was taken aback. Taking a stranger's child home without contacting the police could lead to complications. I wondered if Ruby understood my concerns. She looked at me and said, "I know what you're thinking. As adults, it's right to call the police. But I can't ignore a child who's shivering from the cold and hungry right in front of me." Hearing Ruby's compassionate words, I made up my mind. We could contact the police the next day, but for now, the priority was to make sure the child was safe, warm, and fed. With a reassuring smile, I extended my hand to the girl and said, "It's okay. Come to our place." For a moment, the girl hesitated, but after a short pause, she took my hand. Ruby gently held the girl's other hand. So, hand in hand, the three of us, Ruby, Ava, and I, made our way back to the bathhouse. We learned that the girl's name was Ava. Once we were inside, Ruby took Ava into the bath, while I set to work preparing some clothes for her. Ava's own clothes were dirty and in poor condition, so they wouldn't be usable. I picked out some items from Ruby's wardrobe, a pair of drawstring pants, a shirt, and a jacket. The drawstring pants could be tightened to fit her better. I quickly headed to the store manager's to buy some small women's underwear and a toothbrush. By the time I returned, Ruby and Ava had finished their bath and were coming out. Although the clothes were a bit large for Ava, at least she was able to put them on. The bath had made her look more like a child again. Her pale face was now brighter, and her hair, washed and dried, was much smoother. However, her bangs were still too long to be properly styled, so Ruby secured them with a pin. Despite being partially hidden by her bangs, Ava's face was quite lovely. I asked her, "Are you feeling warm now?" Ava nodded enthusiastically, her excitement evident. It was like a big pool, so warm. "I've never been in a bath like that before," she said with a bright smile. Seeing her so cheerful and animated was a huge relief. Earlier, when she was rummaging through the garbage with a blank expression, it was hard to imagine her in such high spirits. While Ruby and I were getting Ava settled, Ruby prepared a meal for us. Our bathhouse is right next to our home, so after Ava's hair was dried, we moved next door to the house. Ruby had prepared a warm pot of food for dinner. When Ava saw the pot filled with vegetables, meatballs, and upon noodles, her eyes lit up with delight. "Can I really eat this?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. I couldn't help but think how much better it would be if Ava could sleep in a warm bed, Ruby said quietly, tears welling up as she thought about the brave little girl left alone and hungry by a mother who had abandoned her. I, too, felt the sting of tears and struggled to keep them from showing, not wanting Ava to notice. The next day, Ruby and I took Ava to the police box. The look on her face as we said goodbye was etched in my memory, a mixture of loneliness and hope. Trying to hold back my own tears, I managed to smile and said, "Goodbye, Ava. I hope we see you again someday. The police will take good care of you from here, so you don't have to worry." Ava nodded, her expression a mix of relief and sadness. Finally, Ruby gave her a warm hug. As we left the police box, Ava waved at us with a brave smile, and it was incredibly hard to say goodbye after becoming so close in just one night. On the way home, Ruby was deeply concerned about Ava's future. We are a childless couple who had always dreamed of having 2 children. However, when we struggled with infertility and went to the hospital, we discovered Ruby had ovulation problems. We tried various treatments and medications for 10 years, but were never blessed with a child. After a decade, we decided to stop the treatments, though a part of us still clung to the hope of having a child. We chose to focus on cherishing our life together as a couple and moved forward, despite the pain of not having children. Because of our own experiences, we found it hard to understand how parents could leave their children in such a vulnerable state. Unable to forget Ava, we reached out to the police box where we had left her. They informed us that Ava's mother had not been found and that Ava would be placed in a children's home. We were given the name of the children's home as a gesture of appreciation for our help. Ruby and I visited the children's home right away. There were many children there, each with their own story of separation from their families. When we saw Ava, she immediately threw her arms around Ruby. "Aren't you and your wife going to stay with me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My mom might not come back." Ruby and I were stunned, unable to find the words to comfort her. The pain of seeing Ava's uncertainty and fear was overwhelming. All we could do was mask our emotions with forced smiles when Ava asked if we were going to stay with her. It was a painful moment, realizing we couldn't live with her after all. We were still strangers to her. However, as we spoke with the staff at the children's home on our way out, we learned about foster care and adoption. When I glanced at my wife, I saw her serious expression and a resolute nod. That was when we made the decision to explore the possibility of becoming Ava's parents. We immediately began the process of learning about foster care and adoption, signing the necessary documents that day. For children like Ava, who had just arrived at the children's home, it was essential to get permission from the family court to proceed with adoption or foster care. Thankfully, we received that permission without any issues later on. We dove into training and seminars to prepare ourselves for adopting a child. The process was busy and demanding, but we remained focused on our goal. During this time, we made regular visits to see Ava, wanting to build a stronger bond with her. One day, we asked Ava how she would feel if we became her new family. Her eyes lit up and she replied with a bright smile, "I'd be so happy." Her response gave us the strength to keep pushing forward through the challenges we faced. Becoming parents through adoption meant we missed out on the typical experiences of pregnancy and birth. We couldn't go through the same trials as biological parents, but we were determined to create a loving home for Ava. Our goal was to bring more of her smiles into our lives, and we worked tirelessly to make that happen. Then one day, we received a distressing call from the children's home. Ava had disappeared. Both Ruby and I immediately rushed to search for her. Our home was far from the children's home, and we were worried about the worst. What if she had gotten into trouble? Just as we were fearing the worst, we received a call from the children's home with good news. Ava had been found. It turned out that the police had found Ava. We rushed back to the children's home to see her. When we arrived, Ava's face was streaked with tears. She looked up at us and said, "I want to go to where you guys are. I want to eat meals together again and take a bath like in a swimming pool." Seeing her like this, Ruby and I were at a loss for words. We hugged Ava tightly, feeling her small body trembling in our arms. This moment was a turning point for us. Our desire to become a family with Ava grew even stronger. As Ava began to calm down, we made her promise not to leave the children's home on her own, as we were still worried about her safety. We also reaffirmed our intention to take her into our care with the children's home staff. The adoption process took over 7 months, but eventually, we were approved as special adoptive parents and were able to bring Ava home. 5 years later, our lives were filled with happiness. Ava was no longer cold or hungry. She cheerfully went to school each day with a neat backpack. However, just before Ava's birthday, we received a letter from her biological mother. The letter requested a meeting with Ava on her birthday. Without hesitation, Ava said she wanted to meet her biological mother. As her parents, we felt uneasy about how quickly she had made this decision. But Ava was now in the 6th grade and old enough to make her own choices. We decided to respect her decision and support her. If Ava decided after the meeting that she wanted to live with her biological mother, we would approach it positively and thoughtfully. On the day of the reunion, Ava went to the designated cafe alone. While Ruby and I anxiously waited at home, Ava returned after about 3 hours, as usual. She told us that her biological mother had remarried. "My mom seemed happy," Ava said with a smile we hadn't seen before. "I'm glad for her, even though she left me behind." Seeing Ava's happiness and her ability to find joy in her mother's new life made us truly happy for both of them. It must be incredibly difficult to forgive someone who had abandoned you. I was reminded once again of how kind and wonderful Ava is. As she looked at us, one by one, she said, "Dad, Mom, thank you for finding me back then. Meeting my real mom made me realize something important. I felt relieved after seeing her, but I knew I wanted to come back to you as soon as possible. This is where I truly belong." Ava's words filled us with pride and relief. Her determination to stay with us and her clear sense of where she belongs reassured us that our family was where it should be. To celebrate Ava's birthday, the 3 of us decided to go out and buy a special cake. As we walked together, I suggested, "Let's hold hands, just for today, okay?" Ava looked a bit shy but took our hands. I couldn't help but remember the day we first found Ava, rummaging through the garbage, and the day we walked hand in hand to the cleaning company. It was a powerful contrast to see how much Ava had grown since then. Her hand, once small and fragile, was now much bigger. As Ava continues to grow, I wonder how long she will hold our hands. Regardless of how much she changes or how old she gets, she will always be our precious daughter. Holding on to this happy moment in my heart, I know that we will continue to walk together as a family of 3.